Current time is 6:09. Let the minutes show that the quorum is present with all members in attendance. Please rise for the invocation to give on this herald. Remain standing for the pledge of allegiance. Honor the Texas flag to be led by Ms. Sharp.
Please bow. Father, thank you for bringing us to this place tonight. We thank you for our district, our community, our state, and most of all, we thank you for our nation. We ask that you give us guidance and discernment for the food that we need tonight to make decisions that affect so many. We thank you for your love and your mercy, and we ask that you continue to bless our nation. In Jesus' name, amen. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On our Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to Texas, one state under God, one indivisible.
Item 2 on the agenda to discuss potential refunding bonds for interest cost savings and take actions or to adopt an order authorizing the issuance of refunding bonds established by the parameters for the refunding bonds and the delegation of authorities to the administration to approve bonds issued for refunding purposes. Mr. Witt,
I'm responsible for that.
how are you, sir?
Agenda language.
Yes, it's awesome. We love
I
that.
think it is technically correct in this list of the part. I do have a hard copy of the presentation in front of you. There is one.
Thank you, sir.
And so, if you don't mind, it's good to be back. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. We do have some market updates for you. We're concentrating tonight, as the agenda item mentions, on the refinancing or refunding of existing bonds and not the issuance of additional authorized but unissued bonds that voters approved during the middle of that building program. We'll come back to you at the appropriate time to discuss kind of how the bond model is working, how the construction fund needs to be funded to keep up with the projects, and so forth. But today, if you look at the first graph here, you'll see why we're here tonight. And this is the bond buyers index of municipal bonds. It's the graph that you've seen from us in the past. If you go to the far right, the bottom right, we are setting record lows for this particular interest rate index, which tracks municipal bonds throughout the United States. Our last kind of financial crisis, which was self-imposed, if you will, a Wall Street meltdown of liquidity and so forth, was in October of 2008. We had the opposite effect. We were setting the highest end at 6% in that particular financial crisis. And so in this situation, we have extremely low interest rates. This is a tax-exempt index. It's the one we typically issue bonds in a tax-exempt fashion. But I'll speak momentarily to another trend that we're tracking. This is dated back to the bottom left of January of 2001, so it's a very long modern history of interest rates. The average is at 4.22, and we're at 2% today. So that's the cost of money and where we are. So on the next page, it shows a little bit different picture. And this is what we call a yield curve. So the very first left part of the blue and the red and the green is a short-term maturity. And the far right to the blue, red, and green is the longer-term maturity. And so the longer that you give someone the money before you're repaid, generally you get a higher interest rate. So we call it a yield curve. So in January of 20, that's the blue bar, we had very low interest rates. Then in March of 20, we had a massive sell-off of all investment type securities. That was equities, that was real estate investment trust, it was municipal bonds, it was gold. Everything was being sold in March with one exception, and that was U.S. Treasuries. And so our market was not immune to that, and in March we had very, very high interest rates, and then since then we have come down not only to where we started the year, but below the year in interest rates all along the yield curve. And this is called a municipal market data curve. It is a tax-exempt benchmark throughout the United States. On the next page, we track taxable interest rates. And the reason that we do that, in 2017, with federal tax legislation that changed tax brackets and corporate tax rates and so forth, They eliminated the ability of municipalities, including school districts, to refund bonds in advance of the call dates. I'll go through your call dates in just a minute. So the only market that we can access to refund bonds that are not currently callable is the taxable market. And generally speaking, taxable interest rates are higher because the investor has to pay taxes on that interest income. But we track that market now because it's the only one we can access for advanced refundings. And here the story is the same. January was pretty low. March was very, very high. And where we are currently is not only low, but very low, record-setting type of interest rates for the taxable market. The next graph is something that we measure, which is the tax-exempt access that you have to the market within the taxable. And we do that because if we're going to refinance today, then we're going to be issuing taxable. But if we're going to refinance later, when we get to a call date, we'll use the tax-exempt curve. And so we measure the spread and differential between the two to make sure we're getting the most bang for our buck out of any refinancing. And you'll see here that the early part of the graph, there is some spread in interest rate. The latter part of the graph, there is not. So that's another item that we now monitor in today's more complicated and unprecedented situation. On the next page is your outstanding debt service. And because you are a moving target district and a growing district and one in the middle of a bond program, we kind of focus on the 1920 year and the 2021 year. And you have your payments that are shown there. The dark blue is the net debt service after state funding and after use of INS fund balance. You may recall that as part of your building program and your bond model, we have this buildup of very high levels of INS fund balance, both from your tax collections over time, as well as what we call capitalized interest from the premium on the bonds. And so part of that plan is the use, and that's in red. And then the yellow is an estimate of state aid, and the green is an estimate of state aid. When I first started working in this district, over half of that bar would be covered by state aid. Today, it's a very, very small amount. And that amount is based on a $4.9 billion tax base. I think your tax base is going to be higher than that for our purposes, and therefore your tax collections are going to be higher and your state aid is going to be smaller. But I do think you should budget for some use of that very, very healthy INS fund balance that we have built up and planned for and use as we go through the bond model. My purpose today is just to mention that there will be a workshop and authorization to proceed with any issuance of new money bonds for new construction at a later date. But I just want to kind of show you where your outstanding debt service is. The other thing to note about that is the bars go up in the first 5 years. So this is a growth model. We talked about this before. Then when we undertook the bond program, it was based on growing student counts and growing tax bases. You're in the middle of that. If I recall correctly, it was an assumed growth of the tax base about 11%. I think early indications this year are about a 13% growth. It was based on 5.5% student growth, and I think you're trending a little bit lower than that at this point. It was based on 4.25 type interest rates, and we're coming in under that. So all said, if you take all of the parameters and all the metrics that go into a bond program, we're doing perfectly fine. The only one that I think we're missing just a little bit is that student count, which may be closer to 3.5 rather than 5.5. So something to analyze as we implement the remainder of that bond program. So the next page is the approaching optional redemption call dates. This is your ability to either pay the principal off early or refinance the bonds. And so it's the middle column there, you see call date. Well, you have an August 15, 2020 call date, but it's only $2.4 billion. Refunding this bond on a tax-exempt basis literally does not move the needle for you. So I'm not just going to go out to do a transaction just to do a transaction, but it will probably piggyback on anything that we do with these other optional redemption call dates. You have two in August of 21. The one with an asterisk by it is that soft put variable rate bond. We have to reset that rate in 2021. So that's a scheduled resetting. So the refundings or refinancings that we're talking about tonight are not speaking to that resetting. That's something we'll be talking to you about a year from today. And then you go to, in that middle column, 2022, which you have two, and one of them is very big, and that's 50 billion. So the driving force to the decision is how much savings can we expect, or should we expect, from refunding that 50 billion? Is it better to do it today on a taxable basis, or better to do it closer to August of 22? And that's the analysis that we go through as part of this process to make sure you're getting as much bang for the buck as you can. The taxable rates and the ultra low nature of everything we're doing has accelerated our thought process. Sometimes patience on refinancings will pay off. Sometimes the market just dictates to us what we need to do, and we're kind of in that environment today. So you have the 2022 at 50 million, and the rest of them are small except for the 13 billion bond, which is about 24 billion, and that's August of 23. So we have multiple options to work through with your administration, including doing a taxable refunding of all of them at once, doing it piecemeal where we do some of the 22s today and some of the 23s a year from now, and so forth. And we're asking for your flexibility tonight to work with your administration in order to best achieve the amount of savings that we hope to expect out of the refinancing of these bonds. So there's a lot of data on that page. I hope that helps explain it. The next page is, again, the considerations that go into bond refundings, federal legislation, and let me speak to that for just a moment. We currently are in an environment where federal aid and impacts and so forth is being discussed. There is legislation being proposed that would reverse that 2017 legislation that took tax exempt away from us. So if that occurs, then we would do a tax exempt advanced refunding and take advantage of those ultra low rates plus the tax exempt status. They're currently in session. They go in session through the end of July, and they're off August till post Labor Day. So I don't know if they're going to adopt this or not. It's something that we're tracking. If they don't do it in July, then we'll have to make a business decision. Do we wait and see if they want to pick it back up in September? I would say that the odds are if they don't do it in this near-term session, then they just don't think it's that important. But those are things that we don't want to go out and refund all of these, and then the next day we get legislation that says we can do a tax exempt, and then everyone's looking at me saying, why didn't we wait? So monitoring that for you, that's under consideration. The outstanding call dates, there are a lot of them. So again, we have multiple options there. Do them all, do some, do the smaller ones today, do the bigger ones later. The interest rate market, it is volatile. We could wake up tomorrow, you were mentioning day to day. We literally are in a day-to-day world, and that's not any different from the world that I live in. And so we will be watching that. There's a fancy term here called negative arbitrage, and I'll give you the very, very short version of it. The closer you get to the call date, the less mathematical inefficiency is with respect to the refund. In a perfect world, we would have these ultra-low interest rates on August 22 when we're refunding that other bond. That's the perfect world. But we're going to take advantage of interest rates today and accept a little bit of this mathematical inefficiency. If you want to know more about that, give me a call and we'll go through a 3-hour workshop on what that negative arbitrage means. So anyway, market risk is, if you don't do it today, there is market risk in the future. No one is predicting in our world that I can see of any short-term major movement in our interest rates. There just is more demand for safe, secure municipal bonds than there is supply. The savings versus structure, what I'm talking about there is sometimes we save optional pension call dates because we want to restructure those payments in order to accommodate a bond model. And so I don't want to get too aggressive saving money if I felt like you needed that for structure. But in reality, the next one is the impact on the bond model of the savings will actually help us. And a little bit of help for us, where we're a growing district, and I've told you many times, you have many multiple parts to it. We think the savings can impact our bond model. And then future flexibility, if we take it off the table today, then that means we don't have it for tomorrow. But again, it's a matter of the market really driving our decision making. So with that, I'll answer any questions that you have. The recommendation is on the back page. The first sentence there is actually embedded in the order. It's my recommendation that we set a 4% target present value savings. That is a very low watermark. I do think we are going to exceed that, but it protects you in case we decide to pick off a small bond that's not providing a lot of savings and wait to do a larger bond that will have bigger savings. It provides the flexibility to the administration to do this in one and more parts. So I don't really need a motion on that first one. That will be embedded in the second one, which is you would be adopting an order authorizing the issuance of the refunding bonds. We established the parameters, and one of the parameters is that first sentence. And then you delegate authority to the administration to complete this, and we'll keep you up to date over time as to how we're progressing. This is a 12-month delegation, so we may not do this in the next 30 days, we may not do it in the next 3 months. It's a 12-month delegation because you're a large enough school district to do that. And so we'll keep you up to date. We won't require any more action in the next 12 months. We will be back to you in 12 months talking about new money bonds and about the reset of those bonds that we purposely did on a very short-term basis in order to drive down the interest rate on that one. And that's what I say in the last one. The last sentence does not speak to that reset, so you'll get to see me again in not too distant future. And it does not authorize any issuance of new money bonds at this time. When that time comes, we'll come back and get a workshop on your growth parameters, on your student count growths, get information about the status of your construction projects, and blend the financing with your building program at that time. So the motion, and I'll read it, and if someone wants to make it, they can say so moved, and that's to adopt the order authorizing the issuance of refunding bonds, establishing the parameters for the refunding bonds, and delegating authority to the administration to approve the bonds when issued for refunding purposes.
The motion has been moved and seconded. There being no further discussion, the vote will be taken. All those in favor say aye. Those no, the motion is approved.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I see it. Thank you. Number 3 on the agenda is open to the forum. We got one signed up. Mr. Chambers, how are you? Come on up. Don't be scared of us. I'm going to read a small little open forum statement before you begin, and you'll have Elizabeth keep the clock. You have 5 minutes once I finish reading. Fair enough? Okay, here we go. So the board encourages comments from the citizens of the district. Anyone wishing to speak, either as an individual or as representative of a group, may do so at this time. The board asks that the comments pertain to public education issues and be no longer than 5 minutes. Remember, the board may not discuss any issues that are not posted on the agenda. It is an issue mentioned is listed on tonight's agenda. The board will defer discussion until the appropriate time. In addition, the board adopts complaint policies that are designed to secure the lower administration levels and prompt the resolution of a complaint or concern. These policies are online at Caney ISD.org. So you're up. You're ready to go.
Thank you for letting me speak and giving me the opportunity to. My name is Lynette Chambers. I'm the mother of Mackenzie Chambers. She's in Woodridge Middle School, and I have the concern of that my child has disabilities and health issues, and she has had numerous cases of respiratory issues. And so I, as her mother, would like for you guys to keep in mind our students with disabilities. I am very nervous for this coming school year and passionate for my daughter. And I guess I just want to keep a topic of what's the plan for students who can't wear masks. My daughter writes with her mouth. She is a general ed trying to achieve AP classes and has achieved straight A's throughout her middle school, 6th grade year. And I don't want offer knowledge or resources to stop. If you guys do choose in person, I'm struggling with the choice of homeschooling or staying or keeping her in school. But within school, my question is, will there be social distancing among the students? And the lunchroom cafeteria, how will that work? Passing in the hallways, how is that going to work with social distancing? I know that there's also children with autism. I have a friend that asked me to ask, what if their son does not like to wear a mask and can only wear it for so long before he starts pulling it off? I told her that's where we have to stand in our IEP meetings, and I guess was able to speak to the special needs director of the Caney ISD this afternoon at 1 o'clock, and she was able to tell me to stand up in my IEP. But there's also other parents reaching out to me that don't have special needs that are wondering and concerned because I started a page for advocating for our kids. They're just concerned about, is there going to be extra cleaning involved? Is there a budget for extra cleaning of desks and doorknobs other than what was in place beforehand? I don't really have any other, I knew I was going to take up the 5 minutes, but I guess I just really would like for you guys to keep in mind some of our children with disabilities and mask wearing and keeping our kids safe. I know that you guys are doing your best, and I appreciate it. But someone could really have to say.
We appreciate you. Thank you. Yes, keeping the kids safe is another important. So we appreciate you coming by. Thank you. Item 4 on the agenda is closed meeting. The board will now make the closed meeting the authority of Texas Government Code 5511074 for the purpose of personnel matters, Government Code 5511071 and/or 5511129 for attorney consultation, and Government Code 5511074 deliberation regarding the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. Any action as a result of closed session discussion will take place after the board reconvenes an open meeting. The current time is 6:30. Board is closed meeting 8:01. Item 5 on the agenda is superintendent's report. So item 5 on the agenda is superintendent's report. Any reports? I think we've covered good. Good. Okay. Item 6 on the agenda is reports and proposals from board members. I believe we have one concerning our construction update.
At our last construction meeting, everybody was present. The bond project was updated by Mr. Gates. All major projects are complete in bond 2015, 2018 bond. The Kiefer project is on schedule, still frames up. The Woodridge Forest addition is complete, and furniture installation 75% complete. On high school number 3, civil work has started at the high school number 3 site.
Up next, item 7 on the agenda is consideration, consent calendar consideration, findings report, consideration of purchasing report, consideration of personnel report, consideration of minutes, consideration of local policy updates, consideration of MOU and JJAEP, and consideration of instruction materials for secondary English language arts. Also consideration of FNCE local. And consideration of instruction materials for secondary English language arts. Are there any questions or further discussion? Is there a motion to approve items on the consent calendar? Motion has been moved and seconded. There being no further discussion, a vote will be taken. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed is no. The motion is approved. Item 8 on the agenda is consideration of approval of revised policy EIC local. Mr. Calvin.
Yes, sir. This policy that we're bringing tonight for revision is specifically concerning our honor graduates. And I met with our high school principals, as well as Dr. Weatherly, to work through that. And so our proposal is to change that policy to basically make our honors graduates our top 10% based on weighted grade point average. The language in there for classes like Infinity, it's the top 10 students who may not have 100 people in their graduating class as of right now. So we're going to change that policy to read the top 10% of each graduating class to consider honors graduates, and the classes less than 100 will be the top 10 students in that class.
Will the effective date of that be this year? Because my concern would be like juniors going into their senior year who are anticipating being in that 11 to 15% range who before would have been entitled to the honors distinction and now don't.
Yes, once it's approved, it's in place, it will go into effect for this school year. And that will be communicated out to our high school campuses. So, and that lines with the legal policy, and that lines up with a lot of top 10% college admission requirements, things of that nature. So they feel like that was a all-inclusive thing. They will communicate that changes.
Are there any other questions or further discussion? Is there a motion to approve revised policy EIC local? Motion has been moved and seconded. There being no further discussion, a vote will be taken. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The motion is approved. Item 9 on the agenda is consideration of an expedited foreign exchange student waiver. Ms. Schoffer.
Okay, we're requesting permission to apply for a foreign exchange student waiver, which would limit 5 foreign exchange students to each of our high school. It's our current practice. Our waiver for the last 4 years is expiring, so we would like to apply for that again, please.
Could you remind me why we apply for the waiver?
So typically, the counselors, when they're working on their 4-year plan with those students and running down transcripts, it's pretty time consuming and takes a lot of time away from our students that live in our zone. So they feel like 5 is about the most appropriate.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or further discussion? Is there a motion to approve the expedited foreign exchange student waiver? Motion has been moved and seconded. There will be no further discussion. Vote will be taken. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The motion is approved. Item 10 on the agenda is consideration of adoption of order calling school trustee elections and taking all necessary action therefore. Presented by Mr. Dr. Powers.
It's time to order a board trustee election again. So this action item is about ordering the election for November 3rd, 2020. The deadline to do that is prior to our next board meeting, so usually we can do the July of this.
Okay. Are there other questions or further discussion? Is there a motion to adopt the order calling school trustee election and taking all necessary actions therefore? Motion has been moved and seconded. There will be no further discussion. A vote will be taken. All those in favor say aye. Opposed is no. The motion is approved. Item 11 on the agenda is consideration of election agreements presented by Dr. Powers.
This is a related item. We're asking you to approve entering into agreements with Harris County and Montgomery County to conduct the board trustee election.
Any other questions or further discussion? Is there a motion to approve election agreements? Motion has been moved and seconded. There will be no further discussion. Vote will be taken. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The motion is approved. Item 12 on the agenda is consideration of approval for 2020-2021 Parent-Student Handbook, Student Code of Conduct. Mr. Casper.
In
In your board packet was a copy of the handbook code of conduct. Also was a page in there with the significant changes for the year. It's a non-legislative year, so there were no changes in the code of conduct. All the changes were in the handbook. Half of them were TASB recommendations, the other ones were from the departments. Any questions?
Think so. Any other questions or concerns? Is there a motion to approve the 2020-2021 parent-student handbook? Student code of conduct. Motion has been moved and seconded. There being no further discussion, a vote will be taken. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The motion is approved. Item 13 on the agenda is consideration of resolution authorizing the sale of an option to purchase Keeper across the middle school site. Mr. Cowell.
Yes, sir. This is our current Beaver Crossing site, which will be leaving to start the 21-22 school year. Our new site up on Campbell. So we put the property out for sale. We received 2 offers on that. So asking for y'all tonight to allow us to go into negotiations and sell an option on that piece of property with one of the firms that can submit an offer.
Any other questions or further discussion? Is there a motion to approve a resolution authorizing the sale of an option to purchase Keeper across the middle school site? Motion has been moved and seconded. There will be no further discussion. A vote will be taken. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed is none. The motion is approved. Item 14 on the agenda is consideration of approval of CPR 01 in the amount not to exceed $102,409 for utility modifications for the City of Houston requirement bond 2018. New comprehensive high school number 3, project 008-2018. Mr. Robert.
Yes, sir. This is a change order previously discussed. These changes are modifications per City of Houston requirements as we're building down there. We're subject to their guidelines. So I ask for approval of this change order tonight.
Any other questions or further discussion? Is there a motion to approve CPR 01 in the amount of $102,409 utility modifications for the City of Houston requirements on 2018 New Comprehensive High School number 3 project 008-2018? Motion has been moved and seconded. There will be no further discussion. Vote will be taken. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The motion is approved. Item 15 on the agenda is consideration to discuss COVID-19 resolution for the 2020-2021 school year. Mr. Coward up again.
Yes, sir. This is very similar to the resolution that you all approved last spring. At the start of the pandemic, gives the district certain authorities for waivers and things of that nature to give us flexibility to navigate this situation. The main change you'll see in here is that we extended that resolution to December 31st, 2020 for the end of the declaration of emergency for general administration.
Any other questions or further discussion? Is there a motion to approve COVID-19 resolution for 2020-2021 school year? Motion has been moved and seconded. There will be no further discussion. A vote will be taken. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed is no. Motion is approved. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned at 8:13.